Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell Podcast. And this is the Movie Club, and we have convened for our October episode. It's spooky season, and we're around to picking a film that, for people our age, will live on in our nightmares for forever. Thank you, M. Night Shyamalan. And this film is Signs, and this came out in 2002, and read our synopsis. A widowed former reverend living with his children and brother on a Pennsylvania farm finds mysterious crop circles in their fields, which suggest something more frightening to come. Film is, like I said, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, Abigail Breslin, and, M. Night Shyamalan. But as we do, we're going to go around and everybody's going to give, like, how many times have you seen this one, what's your background with it, and what your general thoughts are before we dive into some of the specifics. But as I'm going around, Jim, you're up first this time.
Cool. It's been a while since I went first. I used to have this on like VHS or DVD or something. I've probably seen it like four times or five at
Hmm.
this point, but I hadn't seen it for many years. So much like Braveheart, I'd forgotten about the overt religious tones and imagery in the movie. Um, Braveheart, directed by Mel Gibson, this movie directed and written by M. Night Shyamalan,
But
um,
starring Mel Gibson.
but starring Mel Gibson. So I'm curious as to how much influence he had, Gibson, I mean, on the movie, and the direction it took. Um, but I only remembered a handful of scenes, like the cornfield or like the more suspenseful, spookier scenes, and then like the big climax. Um, I think it's good, but that it was distracting for me. How it was like all a religious parable, maybe in the end. Um, I kind of hope not, but like that's kind of what I took away from it this time watching it.
Righty. Vinny.
I've seen Signs a couple times. The first time I saw it, I saw it on video. It was in like seventh or eighth grade, and the first time I watched it, it was around the time when I was like first getting into horror movies. I mean, I know Signs isn't like a horror film, but it is in that sort of realm. But I remember just being I remember being really creeped out by it. Like like the movie has so many effective jump scares. Um, the scene about a third of the way through the movie when Mel Gibson goes out into the cornfield late at night, I was just like gripping myself, like waiting for something to happen, and then you finally see the alien legs sticking out, and it pulls itself back into the corn, and like that scene, watching it this time, like I was surprised that, like that scene came earlier in the movie than I had remembered, but then just yeah after that it has so many effective scenes in terms of creepiness. I definitely think it has some like some of the most compelling drama of any M. Night Shyamalan movie, which we'll discuss later on, but yeah, I'm really glad I got that I got to watch it again, and I still think it. I think after The Sixth Sense, this might be like his second best movie.
Joe.
So I have seen this movie plenty of times in the sixth to seventh grade. The promotion for this movie at the time really emphasized the mystery of what these aliens look like. And to me, I felt like the marketing really played into that, as well as this being early in Shyamalan's career. So this was definitely marketed as one of those films. I even think Newsweek had that one article at the time that said he was the next Spielberg. So there was a lot riding into this film. And for what it was, and even today, it's entertaining. It's good. I think it's one of the better M. Night Shyamalan movies. But even as I was in the sixth grade, because I had a conversation with one of my little league teammates at the time, and I always go back to this because that was a conversation I had with my dad about it when watching the movie with him. Was this kid's identity was like horror. He loves horror movies. He identifies with horror movies. Had his hair really long. Loved all the Friday the 13th movies. And he admitted, and I told him I was like, Signs is a good horror movie, and he said, yeah, it totally is. Except, as we're probably going to be talking about, these might be the dumbest aliens ever, and we'll talk more about that because even as a kid, it always bothered me that these aliens' biggest weakness is the thing that our planet has a complete control over. And it's like one of those things where it's like I don't know if the plot if it's supposed to be reminiscent of like H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds, where it's the common cold that is what eliminates the aliens. But I feel like something like water is a little bit more obvious, but we'll probably talk more about that.
Oh, we'll certainly talk about that,
We'll
Jeff.
talk more about that.
That might be where we start, and we'll start at the end because I feel like that's been the biggest conversation about this movie for 22 years. But we're not going to jump
Yeah,
into it yet, Kevin.
yeah.
So this is probably my fourth or fifth time watching this movie as well. I did not catch this one when it came out. I wasn't in on the hype as a kid. Although this is a movie was spoiled on before I watched it. So speaking of the alien's weakness, that's what I knew about this movie going into it for the first time. Uh, I thought it was very interesting the first time I saw this movie. I saw it during COVID lockdown for the very first time, and this is like the perfect COVID lockdown movie. By the way, speaking of the aliens, which I'm sure we will discuss it further, like you guys were saying, but they're just kind of, in my opinion, just the perfect setup to have this family be locked down together for the duration of the movie. I think the movie's a really good exploration of trauma, especially familial trauma, and I thought it handled the topic really well. It kind of surprised me when I first saw this. I didn't know what to expect. I think this cast works perfectly together, and I would like to discuss that a little bit more too. That's all.
Right,
No.
man.
Okay, okay. um, I've seen Signs many times. I remember the first time I saw it was on TV. I didn't even really see like the movie itself. I just saw like one scene. It was the basement scene. I was like, oh, like this is like the Science movie. Like I said, I've seen like all like the see like the posters every time somebody goes to the movie theater. So I wanted to watch it, or at least watch the rest of it. And then you see like the hand like fall on the kid's shoulder. And then immediately I was like, nope, nope. And then I turned it off. And then, but I've seen it a bunch since then. And then I saw it again last night. And like, yeah, like definitely like there's like thrilling aspects to it, which are like successful in their attempts. But I think the thing that like was most striking for me was like those, I guess it was like maybe like three flashbacks to like Mel Gibson finding out that his wife is basically almost dead, and like the acting between him and that cop, and she's saying, and he, or I think he asked something like so are you telling me this is the last time I'm going to ever talk to my wife? Like that was more impactful than like any scary thing, or like scary thing like in the whole film. That actually almost got me to kind of like shed a tear almost. I thought that was like really effective, like writing, acting, and just kind of like the scenario itself of like someone being like pinned against a tree. I don't know. That was really interesting. I thought that was really like, effective. I don't know which one of you said that the drama was like pretty awesome in this film, but yeah, completely agree.
So I'm just gonna say a safe bet. This is probably like the 10th time I've watched Science. So a little bit of backstory. Do any of you remember DVD, like mail, like DVD services where like you get like a catalog and have to put in all the numbers on like the little card to like send in? Because I was in book clubs like that. I was in DVD clubs like that. And you get the first five DVDs for like $1 a piece or something like that. But then you have to pay full price for whatever the movie of the month was. The first movie of the month for our DVD service was Gosford Park, which I still have that exact DVD, which I didn't appreciate when I was, 12 when we got that on DVD, which is a Robert Altman murder mystery from the writer of Downton Abbey, which also like would recommend, having watched that a couple times as an adult. The second one was Signs. And this is what made my mom cancel the service because I am anybody who knows me in relation to horror knows I'm a big baby. I don't handle horror very well. I've gotten more used to it because I've watched so many movies at this point. Like, I still, it's hard for me to like go in and like watch a horror movie in a theater and stuff like that. And, we discussed how is this a thriller? Is this a horror movie? I still think it's a horror movie. There's too many like legit scares for this to not be a horror movie. But this scared the shit out of me. Like this scared me so much. That scene with the coal chute and the hand coming through the grate onto the kid's shoulder scared me so bad that my mom got rid of the DVD.
Oh my
So this movie like lasted with me for a long time. And there and to shout out, which most people already know who Chris Stuckman is at this point, but he did a whole entire video essay on signs, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of things about this film. But I have always felt like this is part of the big three films that M. Night Shyamalan has had that I feel like were that conversation, like you mentioned, Joe, about him being the next Spielberg. It was The Sixth Sense, it was Unbreakable, and then Signs. Now, I feel like a lot of people put Signs in the Village in the same place because of one particular thing in terms of people really did not like the twist of either of those two movies. There's a lot of people who really did not. Well, I think more people The Village. I think The Village's twist really rubbed people the wrong way, but I feel like Signs, it's very divisive. The ending of this movie and the realization, as we could already tell from our group here. So, and we're gonna rip that band-aid off now, to start talking about that. But I miss the days when M. Night Shyamalan's films had more to do with the drama. And the drama was the most poignant thing about them because The Sixth Sense, having rewatched that recently, sure, that's scary, but it's the emotion, it's the drama at the end of the film that really hits you. And I would say the same thing about Signs. Now, a lot of his films now are little tricks and stuff like that, like old. I feel like it's more of like a trick in terms of like more of a technical kind of thing. And Trap, I think, was much more of like he was just trying to have some fun with that movie. But this film, obviously the big twist is that this alien race is weak to water. Water burns their skin, which to the point where this started a whole entire internet theory that they're not aliens and that they're demons, which thematically that makes tons of sense, but realistically that I don't think is true because there's too many like the what unless the demons were like we're going to trick them into thinking we're aliens and doing the crop circles and stuff like that. And that's the thing. That could be your head canon because I don't think I'm like Shyamalan's confirmed that of anything in terms of that. But I do feel like it fits really well in the context of the film because, as Jim led off with, this is a very religious film. This is a very faith-based film, which I love when people don't think about like things like this or The Exorcist being faith-based films, but like obviously are faith-based films, and you sure don't like make faith-based films like this anymore because usually most of them are trash. Um, where they don't have any story, character, or anything besides the message. And this is certainly not that because it has the message, but it has so much more. Generally, I don't have any problem with the fact that these aliens, it turned out, were scouting a planet and found out, they effed around and found out this was the wrong planet to come to. Which that's an interesting point, Joe, that you brought up. Maybe this was influenced by H.G. Wells's A War of the Worlds because those damn aliens are like, "Heck, I'm sick. What is this?" And then they died. Because of the common cold. Spoiler alert for like book that's over 100 years old and has been adapted multiple times. Which still really shocked that Spielberg kept that ending, to be honest. But I feel like it's part of the story. I feel like the film does enough, which I'll admit, very like using the news for exposition. Because if you're paying attention throughout the whole scene in the basement to the radio and what they're saying on the radio, where tactically the military's thinking like these must be search parties and stuff like that, like trying to look at the planet, seeing if this is actually like worthwhile. Obviously it wasn't. Was a bad venture for them. Plenty of people have a lot of problems with the ending. And I'll personally say, like, that never bothered me. And there's so many other things that were going for this. But, Joe, if you want to chime in, because you already voiced the fact that, also, real quick, how many of you don't like the twist that it turned out to be water hurts the aliens?
I'm actually okay. I'm okay with the twists, but like probably most of us, I was young enough that I didn't think about it real critically the first time I saw it. So like once you know what the twist is, I feel like you're less apt to be critical of it. I wasn't aware that there was a whole fan theory about demons, but I watched this with my girlfriend, and that was the first thing she said. She was like, "Wait a minute, are they demons? Is this holy water? Like, is the girl like, did she bless the water and it's holy because she touched it?" And we just kind of spiraled into this rabbit hole that didn't really lead anywhere. But I kind of like the throwback to War of the Worlds. I definitely think there was some inspiration there, and yeah, I don't know, I don't mind it.
You know what? The
There
whole
you
thing
go.
with
Oh,
the
So,
whole what
oh, sorry. You can go.
I was gonna say, the whole thing with the water, that kind of got me thinking of this, of like one of the themes I like about this movie is the whole thing with is like the whole thing with coincidences versus miracles. The whole thing with the water, I just like I found that to be like I found that to, like in turn like on the coincidence side, I found that to like I found the water to be more of on the coincidence side. Like, yeah, is like, yeah, the daughter happens to have like this tick where like, she she thinks the water is contaminated, so therefore she leaves the glasses around the house, and then just by by the aliens are allergic to water, and by coincidence they have all this water lying around, and they can like split, they can like throw it at the alien. And then the whole thing with miracles, when Mel Gibson meets with his wife for the last time, and she tells she tells him to tell Meryl to swing away. Like, to me, that wasn't just like that just wasn't like a coincidence. Like, she wasn't like just thinking about Meryl's baseball, just like she wasn't losing her she wasn't like losing conscious and just happened to be thinking about baseball career. Like to me, that was like that was a miracle. Like for her to pass that message along to him, and for him to remember it like at the right time. And like I know at the like those words at the right time are the same with like a like can be the same with a coincidence. But to me, that was like a miracle with what happened with the whole swing away aspect.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I really liked the emphasis on that scene too. I feel like again I already knew the twist about uh, the aliens being allergic to water going into this movie. But a couple characters mention throughout the movie, speaking of Mrs. Hess, uh, making that callback towards the end of the movie, I just thought it was it was kind of it was foreshadowed throughout the movie, and I thought they handled it well.
Joe, if you want to go back to like talking about like specifically the water aspect and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I just want to preface by saying this is that I
Sorry, Joe.
hate this movie because of that. I just want to preface that.
Mhm.
I didn't hate the movie because of that. In fact, going off of what Vinny said with the swing away line, I think it's great for the character's arc to be able to get that message because throughout the whole movie, it's about him trying to find himself and realizing that his abilities to be a good baseball player comes in handy with defeating the aliens. I thought that was really cool. And if anything, I'm also glad too, Shane, that you brought up the fact that the the twist gimmick I feel like started to become a gimmick by the village. There were twists, but I never really viewed this as being a twist. Like to me, the marketing and the magic box thing at the time was the aliens reveal and what did these aliens actually look like? Because up to that point,
Which is
yeah,
like
I'd like to say I missed
lost.
out on all the marketing, so
the
that was
marketing was
lost on me
great.
for sure.
Like the scene and there was the trailer that showed Mel Gibson using the knife under the door. That scene scares me just as much as it scared me watching it in the movie. That to me was so unsettling because you know what could happen and how it happens, and that to me was like the biggest scare for me as a kid watching the movie. And even now, it's just a very well done, scary, atmospheric moment. The thing about the water aspect is that you think about aliens coming to a planet and having a spaceship, you would think that they see a lot of blue surrounding the planet. And this is what 6-year-old me, keep in mind, 6-year-old me thinking this. I'm like, Dad, if they don't like this stuff, why are they coming here? Because it's clearly covered. Because they have spaceships, interdimensional travel, they can make crop circles. I know this is what 6-year-old version, sixth grade version of me said, and I just think it's funny because years later, realizing that people online were also saying that, I just always got a kick out of it. It just kind of always sat with me.
I definitely get it, and I get a kick out of that conversation too. Maybe it's because I already knew the twist going in, but I would agree with you that I didn't really see it as a twist when I saw the movie.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Which it's
For
more of
sure.
like it's a Shyamalan movie. It has to have a twist, right?
Yeah,
So
and it's
like,
one of those things we also don't know actually for sure why the aliens are there.
well, yeah.
People are thinking they're there to invade. Maybe they're not. Maybe they were exiled to a water planet when they're allergic to water.
Maybe they were
Which,
asking for a cure for their disease and figuring out since these people are water-based people, maybe they can help us figure out.
They got cast
which
away like General Zod for all we know.
There you go.
so if you listen to the radio in the basement, the conjecture that they're throwing around is that they don't want our planet. They want us. Which is why they have the whole
Yeah,
nerve gas thing, and which is why he was trying to steal the sun. Like,
that's one thing I
or
wanted to mention too. The radio in the background, getting those bits of information, I enjoyed that.
which like sure, you could be critical of like, wow, they're just dumping exposition in the background throughout the whole entire movie on stuff like that. But like, I feel like it's an interesting thing because it 100% would be happening. It's television, it's the radio, it's the media. Of course, they're throwing around all kinds of different conspiracies and stuff like that. And
We know
is it
it.
Shyamalan spelling it out a little bit?
I
Sure.
to go off of the War of the Worlds, analogy, it really goes back to the Orson Welles broadcast, right?
Mhm.
And the irony or coincidence, I feel like must have played a huge role in it because the Orson Welles broadcast was taking place in Grover Mills, New Jersey, which is actually not that far away from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So I think that could have been.
Shyamalan loves Philly
Yes,
in
it
the
does.
Very
greater
ignorant of
Philadelphia
what it
area.
was.
It's like everything's in Delaware County, Philadelphia, Bucks County, all of them. When Split turned out that they're at the Philly Zoo, I was just like, "Are you shitting me?"
So obviously the zoo afterwards too.
Yeah.
That was the bigger twist because when we saw that in the theaters together, not to go into full details, I knew what the twist the first twist was with the Anne Marie Joyce character, Taylor Joy's character
Yeah.
was, but the zoo portion, I was like, I was like,
Well,
that's
when they like show some of them, like, oh my god, that is the Philly Zoo. Because
or the
funny
30th Street Station.
oh my god, that's a he is very authentic to and like I'm pretty sure Knock at the Cabin takes place out in like the Pine Barrens or somewhere out in southern New Jersey. So like obviously the area is very important, and I would like to imagine that After Earth happened in Philadelphia, just where things have turned to shit
If you
and
would have
where
told
dangerous.
me, 10 years before that movie made that, M. Night Shyamalan and Will Smith, two Philadelphia, icons were making a movie together, you would think that that would be like the greatest thing ever. And
Yeah,
then
but
after,
they also hid that M. Night Shyamalan was even attached to the movie. They didn't even mention his name in the trailers. They're
Like
trying to
like
bury that at
lo-
that point.
like with signs and it taking place outside Philadelphia and like the whole mystery of like what the aliens look like. Just imagine if he went a bridge too far and made the aliens look like the Philly fanatic.
Or even better, predicted what Gritty would look like. Terrifying me. If I was walking around in the cornfield and turned around and like
right.
demonic Muppets just.
Flyers need to get onto that and start making some promo videos where they like just put Gritty in for the alien.
Yeah. So I have a joke, first off. I think the most unrealistic thing, or the thing that aged the worst about this movie is that Merrill would have had a failed baseball career because he struck out too much. In modern baseball, he would be like batting cleanup on some major league team. It's like he struck out 200 times, and Kyle Schwarber's like, hold my beer. So I think that's really funny because those are little details that you can never predict that the whole entire culture of baseball would change on strikeouts, and like that part of the movie just doesn't sit right if you're a baseball fan anymore, and you're just like, nah, he would have got a contract. That's bullshit. But joking aside, I think there's so many great elements of this film, but I think one of the biggest MVPs of this is James Newton Howard. From the
Yes,
opening
yes.
credits with his score, just there is something about this. Well, first off, all of his scores with M. Night Shyamalan are amazing. And he, like, you could just listen to his scores out of context, and they just have so much emotion. And the music paired with the climax of this film, because the climax of this film is incredible filmmaking. The awkward, uncomfortable, intimate fisheye lens shots of like being really up and close and looking at like Mel Gibson as he's staring down this alien. The cuts to Abigail Breslin screaming and the aliens back morphing and reflecting because they could camouflage and morphing into her face screaming and just the montage of how those shots are all coming in. And the release of like the tension of the music when that great shot of the alien falling over from a point of view shot
Mhm.
and the water just starts coming down on top of it and just how the music changes and it sounds triumphant and like the beautiful score and you're just like holy crap, the all the sensory elements of that scene are just firing on all cylinders and this is exactly why people were like M. Night Shyamalan's going to be the next great director because he is very showy when it comes to his direction. And my perspective on that is if you can make your scene more interesting, why wouldn't you?
Mhm.
Like, this is the opposite of keep it simple. But like if you have the ability to do something artful and creative with how you're presenting a scene, why wouldn't you? And that's his MO. Like if I can make this more interesting and dynamic, I'm going to, and he does. And that whole scene and how it deeply connects thematically to the occurrence of the water was there for a reason. His asthma was there for a reason. The whole swing away and just him waylaying on this alien and everything about it and the quiet intensity of Mel Gibson like holding his son's chest and just saying his lungs were closed. Lungs were closed. And just those moments, there's just so much emotion in this film. And this, every time I rewatch this movie, it hits on a deeply emotional level. And that climax was just incredible. It was just
Eh,
an absolute beautiful crescendo of everything.
Hey, you know what? You know what? I'm really glad you brought up the point of view shot of the alien and the water pouring on its head because when I was watching the movie, I realized because you know I think it was like James who said the movie is like it's a it's like a religious parable. There is a lot of religious symbolism. When the water gets poured on the alien's head, I was thinking that it's like it's all it's like in its own weird sort of way. It's almost like a baptism because
100%.
because when you're baptized, they pour water on your head. They pour water on your head to get rid of original sin. When it's getting rid of evil. When the water is poured on the alien's head on this evil being's head, that gets like that vanquishes it.
Yeah, and
Impressed, I never thought of that.
I think one thing I did like about the drama was that he was a pastor who was struggling with his own faith. I thought that was pretty powerful. Um, as a parable, I think it's confused if it was supposed to be a parable. Just like I said, there's no logical through line with like how all this stuff swing away and the asthma and the water being like just so the fact that the daughter Abigail Breslin,
Hmm.
she's first of all she always had that tick like since before her mother died. I thought that was an interesting choice. But I think it all just doesn't quite fit together. um but if when the mother is pinned against the tree and she's kind of crossing over into the next world, let's say, maybe she connected, you know, maybe she saw something, she had a vision or something of what was going to happen. And if there is some kind of spiritual it's like a liminal space, I guess, in the movie between this world and another world, it only really makes sense to me if the aliens were actually demons and coming from another world. You know what I mean? Like that's the only way that all fits together.
I feel like it's more broader strokes fate and less like I don't know if it's like directly like this was like I think the idea is the daughter did that and it was all meant to be. And I think all of those things converging in that moment, the idea is through the whole entire film, you have Mel Gibson's character struggling with not believing anymore. and like why would God take my wife away in that way? And at that moment I feel like he realized like this was all, there was fate here. Like this was meant to be. My daughter was meant to have this tick. My son was meant to have this disease. My wife told me that thing, and I was meant to remember it at this time. And like that kind of thing. Matt, you want to hop in?
Only thing I was going to say was that when he was telling his daughter about the day that she was born, and he told her that everyone called her an angel. So I feel like her and the water, I guess that would be, especially since he wouldn't be the one to bless it because he gave up his faith. She would be the one that would be like blessing all the water inside of the house. And then the mom, if you want to stick with like the whole religious thing, like her death would then not just be kind of like a coincidence, maybe, but also like a sacrifice. And that would go with like the biblical kind of like stuff, like sacrifice and like her faith. Yeah, yeah, Joe.
I'm also going to go off of what I think is when you said, Shane, being meant to be, I'm going back to the scene with Shyamalan talking to Mel Gibson, which is kind of the scene that brings this idea together because he's the murderer. He kills his wife. It reminds him of that moment. And ultimately, if we're going off of the idea of faith and the idea of, of forgiveness, and serving a purpose, right? I feel like that's a very crucial moment. Also, because he brings up the fact that they don't like water.
Which also like
I'm not with that too.
and like Shyamalan would put himself in such like a crucial point in the movie to spout out like, see, here's the thing. Like Shyamalan, especially at this time, was extremely arrogant. Like you can tell. Like, and it would make so much sense he would cast himself in that role to be able to like put out that kind of like bright, important kinds of ideas to the film that he was the one that dropped it. I feel like what I love so much about this script in particular is one thing, look at all the conversation we're having and like how this brings that conversation to the surface, but it's also really detailed. So like earlier in the film, why didn't they call a vet when the dog was having problems?
Because the
He's
only
the
vet in
vet.
town. Yeah.
And Mike Shyamalan's character's a vet. And you see that when Mel Gibson pulls up to his house and you see the little sign that says veterinarian, and you're just like, oh, there. I appreciate the little details that Shyamalan puts into this script and doesn't have to. There are other times like where he literally spelled out like, I don't feel like they like water, which the proper response from Mel Gibson should have been, why? Like, what makes you think that? But he just kind of he got it on his face. Um,
He also said why to, or like how, when he said, "Oh yeah, so I locked one in my pantry," and it's like, wait, what? And he just speeds off.
yep.
What's he talking about?
Bye then.
Like Shyamalan wanted to give himself that mic drop moment where you're just like, which also getting to some of the scares because there are a few really good scares in this film. Obviously, the first one is when he goes into his daughter's room and it's that quick look onto the roof of like the barn and there's a silhouette there. I'm like, whoa, no. Like that was I think that was the moment where my mom should have turned when I was watching this for the first time because that got me. And also, this movie is legitimately funny at times with like just go around screaming like you're a madman. It's like what's he say? I'm filled with anger. And Mel Gibson's character is so funny, which in actuality, he definitely would have been able to sell that a lot better if it was actually Mel Gibson and not the character he was playing. Um, like acting. Um, but the whole thing where you hear something leap off the roof and the swings hit and the rustling in the corner, you're just like, and that brings back where Cherry Jones is like, the sheriff is just like, people in the Olympics can leap that much. And like Mel Gibson's just like, Are you trying to tell me that there's Olympic athletes that are messing around in my house late at night? I'm just like, damn. There's some moments that are legitimately funny in this, but then obviously the scene where he goes out to investigate late at night and you see the ankle and the foot, and you're just like, nope, I'm done. And of course, the scene with it stuck in the cover and the clawed hand coming out, and chopping it up. There's another scene that it took me a few times to notice it is when they're running into the basement, and the last shot that you see is a hand coming up
Oh,
from under the
that's
door.
such a good shot.
And I'm just like, nope, all kinds of nope on this movie. But the most iconic one, it's behind. And when it comes out from behind the bushes on the TV, and you're just like, nope. This movie, it's like, this is exactly why
Oh,
I'm
we all were Joaquin Phoenix watching that on the TV.
yep. Which that was the first moment you really see them. And the thing is, they're not detailed. These are like very tall, lanky, very smooth looking creatures. They didn't try to bend over backwards with the CGI budget to make them detailed, which is fine, but also it fits the fact that like they camouflage. They change colors and stuff like that. And they what's so creepy is when you finally get like that close shot of one of them and they look like this amorphic blob with eyes, and you're just like, this is unnerving to look at because it's so creepy. But like 22 years later, like the CGI is not the best, but I think they knew like we're not gonna make them too detailed because then this is gonna look even worse later. And
And,
I think that was a wise choice.
and the interesting thing is too is like they use the limitations to their advantage. Where at that time the CG is very uncanny. Where you use the term uncanny valley for like a lot of CG characters.
Hmm.
But it also kind of works in a way that you think about movies like Annihilation that comes out 20 years later, that is also taking that same concept of a camouflaging alien, right? And Signs is doing it what 20 years beforehand.
God, the that ending sequence of Annihilation is just actually I think Annihilation has just as many, oh God, nope, I'm noping out on this movie kind of moments as
Just a
Signs
couple
does.
more for me.
The
That,
bear.
that
Anything with
bear,
Yeah,
fungus.
that bear. Also, Joe, to your to what you were talking about, like in terms of like being creative, maybe with like the visual effects. I did like the fact that, especially like in the end when the alien's getting beat up with the baseball bat. Also, the alien can't like put up like a bit of fight. That thing, I didn't like,
Yeah.
I didn't even like
They
Bob.
can't go through doors. They don't like water, and they don't fight. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't understand. The only thing it has is the wrist move, which is like I don't know. But I did like the fact that I guess maybe they were thinking, okay, so how do we kind of like sort of like hide, I guess, the fact that we're not gonna like detail this thing. So they used like screens and like I think like mirrors or like TV, like a TV screen that was
well, the
off. Like,
reflection on the
Yeah,
TV
the
screen to
light and
reveal it
all
was in the
that.
house.
A
What,
lot
what,
of
what,
light coming out from the
what, and
window
then,
behind the alien.
and then and then when the alien's being hit with the baseball bat, I think there's that one shot where like you see it through the water glass.
Yep.
yeah, I actually like I thought that was
Oh,
creative. Like I feel like maybe in other movies I would have thought like, oh wait, that's cheap. But in this one it was kind of like, oh yeah, actually that's okay.
Well, I think M. Night Shyamalan has become an expert of making movies with no budget. Because, like, most of his movies outside of, I'm guessing, Last Airbender and After Earth have considerably smaller budgets than what he probably could have used to make them work. Because, like, I think one of the things about Unbreakable is that it's such a great film with no budget. Like, I'm sure most of the budget was just Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, and they avoid having to like, and to the point like I think Glass had a budget of maybe 20-30 million dollars, and like they literally only had Bruce Willis for like I think 2 weeks shooting because that's all they could afford, which is why he disappears for the whole entire second act of the movie. But
I mean,
like
pretty much all of his movies make their money back and then some.
Yeah, because he's smart about it. I feel like he went to the John Carpenter school of we're gonna make it work. Sometimes it doesn't work. I don't know how many of you have watched Ghosts of Mars, which is actually just two acts of a movie, and then they're like, "Well, I think we ran out of budget. It's good enough, right?" It's in half a third act of the movie. Like,
But with M. Night Shyamalan and his budgets, like what's great about him having these smaller budgets, and I know obviously there are some films that he made that are like, why did he make this? But like more often than not, when he has these smaller budgets and he shows that he can like make all of that money, all of that money off of those small budgets, like the studios are going to be more, they're going to be more open to hiring, they're going to be more open to hiring him, knowing they're going to make all that money, and therefore Shyamalan, he's able to make the movies that he wants to make without the studio breathing down his neck.
you can definitely tell he makes the movies that he wants to make for sure. And I'm glad, like, we've all lived through the three stages of M. Night Shyamalan because he started as a genius and everybody being like, he is the next great filmmaker. And then we lived through the section of time where he was a hack and everyone's like, we thought he was small, like we overreacted. And we got things like Lady in the Water and The Happening. You're like hot dogs? Um, and Mark
The happening,
Hot dogs get a bad rap.
the happening, unfortunately, was the first R-rated movie I saw in theaters.
the first R-rated movie he did, which is
Yeah, I know.
ridiculous. Which is crazy because I would assume you'd ask anybody, and they're like, "The Sixth Sense was definitely rated R, right?" No, he doesn't need that, which is also something very interesting because I hear from so many people like horror movies can't be truly effective unless they're R-rated. I'm like, if you're a limited director, maybe. If you really know how to direct something, then like, yeah, you could make it work. And Mike Shyamalan made plenty of films that probably could have been R-rated really, really well. But no, it was The Happening, and I feel like Last Airbender was like the what most people thought was the death note of his career, where it's just like, oh my God, what is this? Um,
And
and
it sucked
then
even more because he said he was a self-proclaimed fan, and he talked so highly about the show. But it's like what you said before too, where he's using his style, which is all about being subtle, for a series that is very over the top and has very big action and set.
you mean him, the Earthbenders bending pebbles?
Yeah, or making
Yeah,
that one rock just like float up and then oh yeah.
but then it happened, and then Split happened. And I'm happy that we live in a world now where M. Night Shyamalan is at the point where you have M. Night shit fans. And no matter how good the movie is, people are going to go out and see it because it could either be a train wreck or it could be something profound. And you have no idea which, but it's kind of exciting going to the theater to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm there for that. I'm
Like
there for that.
like most normal directors. Let's be honest.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like
He
people,
just has a particular spotlight put on him.
it's just he has so much attention on, but yeah, most directors have like shitty movies and like this is just because it's very fresh, but like I went to go see Never Let Go today, and I was a huge fan of Alexandra Aja's Claw, that film with like the gators and stuff like that, during a hurricane. That was really well done and shocked the hell out of me. That was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Never Let Go kind of let me be disappointed. Like a lot of
Let
directors
go.
struggle to like because movies so damn hard. One thing you shouldn't do, which will probably put you in a bad spot to potentially make a bad movie, is cast Mark Wahlberg as a science teacher.
What? No.
And here's the thing too. I feel
Or
like
do that anyway. I support it.
this was Signs was the film where I feel like the M. Night Shyamalan style of acting was born. Because if you watch Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, people are still acting generally normal. But this one, there's something off. Like I feel like purposefully about every performance, and it's
Yes.
because
I
go ahead, Vinny.
It's very
so
deliberate.
Yes.
all right, so I was it's funny to say that because as when I was watching Signs for for this recording, I was thinking, you know what? Yeah, this style of acting seems off. And you know what? The reasons why see what I was thinking is that like obviously the family is acting a little off because they're still getting over this major loss in
Mhm.
their life. Like whereas with everyone else in this movie, I saw them acting off because of the situation they're in. I think the way that everyone acts in this movie is a great example of how people act, whether they're processing grief or processing uncertainty. And I know it just so happens that like the M. Night Shyamalan style of acting seems to have started with this movie, but for this story specifically, I think it works perfectly. Like the way like the way how people act just a bit off in it.
I feel like the one that really
Yeah.
like old is one of those ones where I'm just like, I feel like a bunch of these performances are bad. It's like something just seems so off about the performances, but I feel like Roy Culkin is a weird kid. And like he's playing a weird kid, and I think it really works in that way. I think Mel Gibson, and this is always the tricky thing because like, is Mel Gibson a great person? No.
Great actor, though.
But here's the thing, he's extremely charismatic and talented actor and filmmaker. And like I saw a friend of mine watch Signs, and basically like the less to say about Mel Gibson the better. But like I feel like you can't talk about this movie without talking about like that's such an important performance in this film to anchor this.
He is I would say this is probably one of his best performances.
He's definitely the best performance in the movie, I'd say.
A, there has to be like if you don't make that character work, none of this works because everything is leaning on him and his journey, and this is about him. And like you have Joaquin Phoenix, who just came off of what 2 years before this Gladiator,
Mhm.
and like Meryl's such an interesting character because like he has the whole like him telling the story about where him understanding fate, where like he was making out with this girl and then he like turned away and she threw up all over himself. He's like, she could have threw up all over just being like those kinds of things. It's like it's such a relatable, like weird moment, but like it was like the most these two brothers were genuinely connecting in this movie, which was so interesting. And the moment at the dinner table
Oh yeah.
where like Mel Gibson starts like angry eating all the food and then just breaks down, and then they have that moment together. Like that's where so much of this really leans on. And I think Vinny, you were the one who brought Vinny. Were you the one who brought up the? No, who brought up the about the story about the daughter's birth? Like that
Oh,
scene where Mel.
that
Was that you,
was
Vince?
no,
Was
it
it?
wasn't me.
I think that was Joe.
It was
That was
Matt.
or Matt. It was Matt. I'm just thinking of like somebody say you said that because am I going crazy? But no, like that scene, like Mel Gibson and Abigail Breslin, it's like there's a lot of emotion there. Um, I really is like this was I forget when I did this. It was either last year or the year before. I did an article about my top faith-based films because the thing is like one of my top five favorite movies is a faith-based film, which is Ben-Hur. and you don't really think about it that way, but literally it's the subtitles, the tale of the Christ and stuff like that. And it was just accepted back then in the 50s and 60s that you made big epic films about the Bible or about biblical stories or faith-based stories. Nowadays, the connotation is, God's Not Dead or anything Kirk Cameron's making or the Kendrick brothers and stuff like that. This is a film that navigates faith in a meaningful way that also has interesting characters, has interesting filmmaking, has interesting genre flair and elements. And like these are the kinds of films that are the most interesting. And this history of this, like it stems from like The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a faith-based film. The whole entire journey of Father Karras is finding his faith again. And in his final moments, finding his faith again and making the ultimate sacrifice against Pazuzu, this demon. And I feel like this film takes up that torch in terms of like it is deeply about faith. But it's not like 100%, like it's a big part of this film, but it's not beating you over the head with it. There's other elements to this film that engage you. But
I like that because I wouldn't necessarily call this a faith-based film. I would say that the main character has faith as a huge part of his that every action he takes in the movie. And I like the way they handle it. And speaking back to that scene on the couch with him and Meryl,
hmm.
with the father and Meryl, I like that whole interaction with them because it kind of sets up. Jesus, what is Mel Gibson's character's name again? He's Graham. Graham,
Graham,
right?
yep.
Um,
Which also that sounds so much like a Graham Hess sounds like a reverend name.
it does. But he's kind of going in that scene. He's kind of discussing how he they're going back and forth on what type of faith they have essentially. And then as the movie goes on, it kind of becomes a choose how you want to express your faith for his character. So by the end of the movie, he decides he wants to choose these coincidences, is how I see it. Not that whether or not you believe in predestination or not, or any of that, I think doesn't matter. It's his approach to the situation that's been presented to him that is the situation that he's found himself having to navigate. So he chooses to see the coincidence between his wife and the baseball bat being on the wall so that they can save the kid from the alien. I think that's my interpretation, at least. I like the way they did it.
Does anybody else want to confirm or deny that was their house in that book? Because that's a creepy scene where they're looking at the house and it's like the family dead on the front lawn and stuff like that, and you're just like, that was the moment where I think it got a little too real for Graham. He's like, let's put this away. Just like the tinfoil hats and everything. The best part was when he came in and Meryl was with the hat on. And
All three of them, yeah.
you see all three of them sitting there, and they all just like slowly look up at him, and he's just like, "What the hell's going on here?" Which that's one thing I can appreciate about M. Night Shyamalan is when it works, he can really inject good humor into his movies. Because like sometimes the humor does not hit, and I don't want to keep picking the happening while it's down, but like the humor in that movie is shit. To be perfectly honest. And it's very poorly executed. That whole scene with Mark Wahlberg being like, no, we don't want to kill you. Like, says the guy that sounds like he really wants to kill you in your own home.
I gotta catch up on my bad Shyamalan movies. I've only seen his good ones and Trap so far.
I have seen all of them except I have not sat through The Last Airbender.
I haven't seen that. Actually, I think I think the only two I haven't seen are The Last Airbender and After Earth, and I don't care to see either one of
You're
them.
not missing much. Just
I
watch.
saw After Earth in a theater on a double date, and I fell asleep 6 different times in 90 minutes. And you're wondering, why did Shane fall asleep 6 times instead of once? Because Jess was drunk and kept waking me up to complain about the movie. I'm like, let me go.
I thought you were gonna say you saw After Earth on a double dare because that would have made more sense.
I wish it was. We let Jess's friend pick the movie, and that is what they picked. It was
Well,
Uno's and then AMC Hamilton. Jess had 2 Long Island iced teas and didn't realize how much alcohol is in a Long Island iced tea, which is a lot,
oh
apparently.
jeez.
So, and Jess is a lightweight. I don't drink alcohol, so I wouldn't know. You know? Uh, Jess was drunk watching After Earth, and I was dead sober, trying not to watch it. It's just boring. Like, that's the one thing. Most of them, like Shyamalan movies, are wild and weird and can be completely just like, why he make these choices, but they're not boring. After Earth was boring. And I'm just like, why? But even if some of his other ones that are really bad, you are too busy realizing just how bad they are to not think about while you're not having a good time. So, but what other things did we have to bring up about Signs specifically? Jim
This is our. Oh, sorry.
or Kevin?
I was gonna say I want to see Mark Wahlberg in the Graham Hess role now.
Oh.
Don't
Did
do that
wasn't
to
he a
this
priest?
movie.
Wasn't he a priest in a movie a couple of years ago? You could like
Yes,
cross the
Father
universe.
Stew.
Father Stew loses his faith. Father Stew number two.
Well,
That was all.
Electric Boogaloo. Um, Mark Wahlberg's actually starring in Mel Gibson's new movie, Flight Risk. It was supposed to come out in October and got pushed to January. So,
Would they just call the Father Stew sequel Father 2? Just, it's obvious.
Or or or
well,
or, or call it Father Stew 2, but the S in Stew is a 2.
except the issue is, I'm pretty sure he's dead. I did see Father Stew, and fun fact, Mel Gibson played Mark Wahlberg's dad in Father Stew, which is not the first time he has played Mark Wahlberg's dad in a movie. Look at you, Daddy's Home too. Um, so obviously, well, and it's all part of Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson are starting like an anti-Hollywood studio where they make films for, the real people, like the
Racists United.
that would be too obvious of a title, Kevin. Um, they're supposed to be making films for like the heartland and the people that don't want to be indoctrinated by the Hollywood elite. Um, their propaganda and stuff like that. So
Racists
apparently, Flight
United.
Risk.
Yeah.
Are they gonna join in the Kevin Costner Western universe? Because it seems like they all have a common vision here.
They're recruiting other people. I know Kevin Sorbo is probably going to be involved.
Hercules?
So
Is that Hercules?
yes, he is a devout Christian and big conservative actor in Hollywood. John Voight's probably going to be involved, who's Trump's best friend. Um, and I'm not joking. Like they legitimately are putting this studio together, and I'm pretty sure Flight Risk is one of the first ones coming out of it. Because like I don't know why they need to make this separate one. Taylor Sheridan's already making things. People, and he's obviously getting the attention for that demographic of people. Speaking of Kevin Costner, so they got Yellowstone. What are they complaining about? Um, which, to be frank, I do actually watch all of Taylor Sheridan stuff because I am a big fan of westerns and neo westerns. But to the point of this, I don't want to see Mark Wahlberg in another M. Night Shyamalan movie. I don't think he's the kind of actor to pull off these kinds of things. So, anything else anybody wants to throw out about Signs?
I really like the just like in The Sixth Sense. Actually, I really like the use of the child actors in this movie. They were really standout in this one.
You got a Culkin and a Breslin. You got good stock there
This is
in
our
terms
second
of,
Abigail Breslin movie after Little Miss Sunshine.
yep.
But then Abigail Breslin's brother gets shot in the happening.
Oh, really?
With Spencer. Um, I think it's so crazy that Spencer Breslin was the one who was like a much bigger name at one point, and then Abigail Breslin at least is still acting. Um, and then Rory is the least famous of the three Culkins actors. I want to see Kieran Culkin in an upcoming Shyamalan film. Just want to see him in more stuff because obviously he got a lot of attention on Succession. Um, but no, the child actors in this did a really good job. And, Rory's character, Morgan, is definitely leaning more towards one of those like kid characters that are well wise beyond their age kind of thing. Like he's standing up to his dad and him calling his dad out on like competing voting and stuff like that. It's just like that was a tough scene because like you can tell that Morgan is hurting. And I feel like the dad's running away from his grief and throwing his faith away. And there's definitely a lot of tension between him and his son because of that. I don't think Bo's old enough to really conceptualize that, but I feel like Morgan definitely is at that age where you can tell he's frustrated with his father. And that comes out in like that dinner scene.
Yeah.
That's really tough to watch.
Yeah, you can definitely tell he's being shaped by all this, even without the alien stuff going on.
Also,
This is like
when he called out his dad when they were voting to leave the house versus stay, and the son was like something about like, why would you want to stay? Why would you want to leave the house that mom used to live in? But he like yelled it at his dad. So I thought that was a pretty interesting line, and then B, like I like the delivery. But yeah, agreed. Attention.
damn kid calling his dad out hardcore on that one. Anything else? I feel like we talked about a lot. So, oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say, the aliens like going to Applebee's.
Oh yeah, let's wrap things up. Who are we going to take the family out to Applebee's after this ordeal?
Well,
No, no,
I'll, I'll,
no,
well,
the
well,
I'd take
aliens.
Meryl out. I think he's
well,
cool, dude.
I'll take him to Applebee's as long as Graham doesn't start angry eating.
Off your plate.
I don't know. I get too much of a weird vibe from the kids. I feel like the Joaquin Phoenix would be a little bit more relatable. I feel like he's got some fun stories to share. Just in general, just Joaquin and Phoenix would be a fun person to hang out with because of just how socially awkward he is.
Wow, Joe.
I mean, listen, as a socially awkward guy myself, I relate so much to his interviews.
Fair. I don't think anything could be worse than when Steven Soderbergh put it in his hands to give out Best Actor, which ended the Oscars a couple of years ago when Anthony Hopkins wasn't there to have the award because it was COVID and he's an old man and it was probably like 4 a.m. in Wales at the time, and Joaquin Phoenix had to awkwardly be the one up on the stage with that award, just being like, I don't know what to do about this. And they cut hard to Questlove, who's like, and that's a wrap on the Oscars this year.
I
So,
feel like I heard about that, but it probably got overshadowed by Will Smith later.
well, so that was the next year.
That's what I
So
meant.
there's been whether you go back to the 2016 films Oscars in 2017 with the whole La La Land Moonlight thing. Or
Oh yeah.
the why the hell would you put any award on at the end that's not Best Picture with the Soderbergh one in 2021? Or, in 2022 when Will Smith straight up bitch slapped Chris Rock on live television, which a few of you were in my home when that happened. That was wild.
The best part about it was when Alex was
Yeah.
watching it, and like we were all thinking it was a joke at first, and then Alex's reaction's like, oh no, he's not, he's angry,
Oh.
he's really mad. This is real. And then Shane going online to find the unedited version where we hear Will Smith yell.
Just went up to bed right before that.
I always tell them that too when I see him. I'm like, I'll always remember watching the Oscars with you when you reacted. It was so genuine.
So we'll go to Applebee's with Meryl at least. Aliens aren't getting an invite. If they walk in, I'll at least throw my water at them.
They can't fight, though. I mean, like,
Well, they can't even get in. They wouldn't know how to get through the door.
Joe, he got out eventually. Remember?
Eventually, they were
He
like
was
all
the
around the
one.
house trying to find a way to get in.
He was the one at the end that showed up and was missing a finger. Keep saying he. I do not want to put gender labels onto
It's
these blob
appropriated.
aliens, and I have no idea if this species has gender or not.
and that's how your YouTube comments turn to flames.
Shane,
I'm just
I'll
sick with
read
they
them.
were prisoners that got exiled to Earth. That's my
Oh.
belief.
There you go. All I'm saying is, I'm just assuming it's a dude. That kind of behavior just seems like dumbass shit that guys would do. What are you saying that I'm burying
Dig
myself,
in that
Joe?
grave, that YouTube comment section. Just don't read them.
I wish that enough people watch these videos to get pissed off at me for what we talk about on this. So there you go. Come on, bring it. I'll put up a fight, unlike the aliens in this movie. There you go. Ended on that note. But this is another month of the movie club here on the Development Hell podcast. I hope you enjoyed this Halloween themed one as we talked about signs. And next month we'll be back to our, just if it's 10 years old or older. And we'll have to see what we wind up watching. But from Jim, from Joe, from Kevin, from Matt, from Vinnie, and from Shane. Thank you as always for always tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.